what I'm going to talk about is publishing during your PhD. And I'm going to talk about the benefits of doing this because it's one of the things that's really, really important if you can achieve it. But what I'm going to do is talk about some strategies that you can go on to use to make it easier. So let's just talk a little bit about that context of why should I publish during my PhD? Well, as you can see, it's publish or perish is the common phrase that we get given. And in academia, it's a really cornerstone skill, but it's very challenging to do. And there's some smarter ways about going about approaching it that take a lot of the anxiety out and make it more worthwhile. So there are benefits to you as a student, there are benefits to me as a supervisor, there are benefits to the university, and there are benefits to the community out of you actually publishing your work as papers as you go during your PhD. So the big picture benefits for you are increased research opportunities, improves competitiveness for scholarships, improves grant success, Garner awards, secure employment, all sorts of things like that are obviously really important. And when you're going to graduate and when you're applying for jobs, one of the things they're going to be looking at is who's got more papers in what journals. So it makes you much more competitive all along the way. That's going to make a difference if you can finish your PhD with papers already, or at least under review or in press, things like that. It's going to put you at the head start with it. But there are benefits to doing papers as you go for your PhD for the PhD process itself to make it a lot easier. And that's why we think it's really worthwhile, not just because at the end, but during the process. And as you can see from this slide, this is a PhD student of mine, really lovely person who was a full-time mother with 2 children already, had another child during her PhD, worked part-time, and look at the outcome of all of her hard work. When she submitted her PhD, this was a page at the front of her PhD, listing all of the outputs she produced, including all of these papers. At the end of the process, at the time, you can see it's a large list of papers, and out of that she's got at least now 7 papers. So it's a fantastic outcome. For the examiners looking at this PhD, they already knew that a whole lot of it had been proofread carefully, reviewed by editors, accepted by journals. They knew it had a stamp of approval already. It came endorsed. Now, she's a great student. She's a fantastic person, but this is not like superstar, the best student ever, that's ever had at our university. This is a good student, but this is also an achievable outcome. It's not about setting a standard, a bar too high. You guys can do this. That's what we're really getting good at, helping you, motivating you, and making that an achievable goal. So some of the benefits along the way, you get a sense of achievement during the candidature. PhDs are a long, drawn-out process, 3 years, 3.5, 4, getting a long time. And often there aren't many stages along that way where you get a sense of achievement as you go. So it can get to be really hard to feel like, I'm putting all this hard work in, what's the outcomes? Where's some tangible, finished work that I've done? So doing it by papers helps with that. It improves motivation. It gives you a sense of achievement, of motivation. I've done something and I've finished it. And that's really important during the PhD. It turns the big thesis down into a series of discrete chapters and papers. And that makes this huge document much, much more doable. Thinking about it as individual papers that you build together is much easier than thinking about it as this huge mammoth document to have to produce. It also means that as you learn, you get to make your mistakes on smaller bits. So any typing, typos, editing, format, style things, you're not making it on 200 pages, you're making it on 20. You're making it on the first 20 and someone gives you feedback, so you don't make it on the next 20. And the next 20 is better, and the next 20 after that is better, and after that. So by the time you get to write the end of it, you've learnt so much. It's just about turning that information into text. You already know how to go about the process of writing, and you know how to deal with the things that you find challenging and to fix the errors you might make and get all those great writing skills going. You obtain feedback from different people. This is really important. You get to obtain feedback from your supervisor, but also when you submit it to journals, you're getting to obtain feedback from reviewers who aren't your supervisor. You're getting it benchmarked. Continuously you're getting your work benchmarked by people in the discipline, a whole range of people. And it's a really valuable thing because, you know, your supervisor's fantastic, but unfortunately you can start to invest in them the belief in God or the devil. This allows you to have a wide range of people's opinions, so you've got a better idea of how you sit in the diverse field. And there are all these other benefits. One of my students yesterday, he's already submitted a paper 9 months into his PhD. It's been accepted, it came out earlier this week. He already had an email from somebody overseas going, hey, this is fantastic work, I'd really like to know more about it. The buzz he had when he came into my office to feel he already has status as a researcher now, right at the beginning of his project. It's a fabulous feeling. And it's a really doable process. So it made him feel for his PhD so much more worthwhile that he was making a contribution as he went. He was adding to knowledge. And that wanting to benefit the world is part of the motivation for doing a PhD. And it breaks down that isolation you can get into in your PhD when you're locked away in the field or at your desk and everyone's out there and you're working away and you're obsessed. It means you're getting part of a community. You're joining the academic community in your discipline. So part of that feedback, part of that benefit is you're benchmarking the quality of your work. When it's been accepted by journals, you know it's good enough. And as you saw from the slide before where the student had all those list of papers, so does the examiner. So you know you're good enough. And that's fantastically important too. So supervisors, we benefit too. We get a lot of this more out of it, and it's fantastic for us because we get a better return for our effort. One of the things about it is we have 2 students, one produces the thesis and that's it. Then we get a thesis, we get a supervision, we get the pride of that. But if we have another one who does that and publishes, that's so much better too. We get all of the benefit of the papers as well as the student finishing their PhD. And part of that is that we get co-authorship. And co-authorship is important for us as well as for you as a student. It adds to our academic reputation. And by doing it in these nice discrete steps as we go, we're much more likely to get the papers, as you are much more likely to get the papers out. So it's a much better outcome for us. We get to spread the supervision load. Now this is really important because what happens with the supervision is if you do it in the more normal thing, we have a big bit at the beginning where we give you lots of advice on designing the experiment and everything, and then you're going and collecting the data and doing it, and then you're going and writing it. And it makes it very intense in these 3 different periods. By doing it as papers, we're breaking we're breaking it down to tasks. For us, we're breaking it down into more discrete tasks. So we're giving you feedback on your writing style on 20 pages. Much easier for us. You're learning from that. The next 20 pages, we don't have to give the same feedback. We've already got it. We can work on the next paper with new feedback, more detail, speeding up the process. So it breaks that big tasks down into a discrete, which makes it much easier for us to deal with that workload as part of our jobs. We get faster student completions, another huge benefit for us. Because students know where they are, they know how they're going, it comes through at the end. And with this, for both the student and the supervisor, it's really important because if students do the whole thesis and graduate, well, with the best will in the world, it's often really hard to turn around then and turn them into papers. You've just spent all this time on it, you've just written the whole thing together. Often it's the last thing you want to do is then to go look at it again and turn them into papers. Hopefully also you've gone and got a job, and that means you've got new responsibilities, new work you're meant to do, so you don't have time to do it. So what we often find is that if people graduate, they have the best will in the world to turn it into papers later, but often the rest of their life takes over and it doesn't get out there. For the universities, publishing as you go is really useful to them because universities get credit for the papers, they get for the credits for those papers, but sooner too. They don't have to wait for a year or 2 years after you finish. They're getting it as you go. They also get a greater investment of return in the money and time, the resources. For a university, a PhD students are quite expensive. There's their scholarships. If they're international, there's a fee scholarship. There's the library, the desk, the computer, the supervisor's time, the front office's time, the admin's time. It all adds up. If you have one PhD and no papers and another PhD, 3, 4, 5, 1 paper, that's a better return because they've got both the PhD and the papers. And for the community, it's a benefit. And this is a really important thing because the papers mean your research has been tested, peer-reviewed in the literature, and everyone in the world can benefit from it. Although PhD theses are now becoming more available electronically, it's not as widely read, as easily available. So this means that the community gets to know all this hard work, all this new knowledge you've created. They get to learn about it. That's useful, and sooner. So, lots of good reasons there. But it's not all a bed of roses. One of the things that's really interesting, if you're dealing with my own students, reading the literature on this, is some of the reasons that people don't go ahead with writing papers. A lot of it is how it makes them feel. A lot of it is about anxiety. And this is one, it's about feeling that you're going to be judged, that you're going to be possibly rejected by reviewers. Now, good supervision, good structured process can help you deal with it, and also doing it as a sequential process, building up your skills, going for better journals each time, developing as you go. It's not that you're going to be trying to do, the perfect high dive the very first time. It's like anything, you're going to learn to do it on lower steps, building your way up to that high dive. It's also a certain amount of additional work. If nothing else, each journal has its own referencing style, so you're going to have to format the documents to one journal style and then reformat it again in the other thesis. And the other downside is it's a long lead time to publishing, and that is you can submit the paper and it'll be under review, then you get reviewers' comments back, hopefully they're going to be positive, you might do some changes or resubmit to another journal if not, and then it gets accepted. And sometimes it can take 6 months, a year, 2 years, a while for that process. So not everything will be out by the time you hand in the thesis, but if you can show that some of it's been accepted and some of it's under review, that's a bigger guarantee for the examiner than none of it. So even then, it's a really good thing to do with that. So that's another reason that it's worth dealing with this. So as I mentioned, there's anxiety. The other thing is about skills. And one of the things is that it's really weird. Although writing papers is about one of the most universal skills and academic needs, we often are very poor at training people on how to do it and giving them skills. So as you can see from this slide, we've got a range of places you can access information. There's obviously your supervisor, and often libraries and other support units have general skills and courses in writing. But often there's a big gap in between, and what you can do is fill in that gap yourself and through your institution with a whole lot of really useful strategies that have been found to work with students. They include discipline-specific workshops, often run by conferences, maybe your research centre. Some good academics in your area may be able to even run these formally or informally. We've started doing that in our research centre and more generally at Griffith. Peer writing groups get together formally or informally with other students and other people writing, and form support groups where you exchange papers, exchange section of papers, get feedback from each other. But mostly what they've found that these peer review writing workshops work and groups is it makes you realise other people are in the same situation as you. You don't feel so alone, so isolated. You can express your nervous anxiety. You can share your tales of getting back the paper back from the supervisor covered in blood. Somebody once said it looks like a road accident. There's just red everywhere. And that helps take away that fear. And it also breaks down that isolation that can set in your PhD. There are books and articles. There are a whole lot of resources out there about how to write papers structured in different discipline areas more generally. Make use of them. They're there to help you. There's some fabulously good stuff out there. And so those three things can help fill in that gap. In terms of the books and articles, here's my one. We all got to plug our own. This is How to Write Ecology Papers. And we're now producing booklets like this. It's a 50-page booklet distilling for my students the summary of what I found useful in telling them so that they can do all of that and then know what I'm going to be expecting, know how to go it in the best way I found to tell them. We're producing more of these. We're going to be producing ones in social sciences, in chemistry, etc. There are lots there out there. This one's online so you can download it any time, but go make use of these things. It really helps. It deals with the skill and it also helps deal somewhat with the anxiety. And it's usually the anxiety rather than the skill that's the inhibitor. So think about working out some smart ways to deal with that anxiety. So the outcome of what I'm saying is, with paper writing, aim at resilience. Publishing can be hard, but it's really worth trying. and it's really worth trying because you must be surprised that you will succeed. Good luck.